It started on a cold October night. Julia was walking home from her friend's house, taking her usual shortcut through the quiet suburban streets. The wind rustled the fallen leaves and the streetlights flickered weakly. She didn't believe in ghosts, nor was she afraid of the dark. But that night, something felt different. The streets were too quiet. Not a single car passed by, no distant voices of neighbors chatting on their porches, no barking dogs. Even the wind, though cold, seemed to carry an unnatural stillness. It was as if the entire world had gone silent, waiting for something to happen. Julia hugged her jacket tighter around her body, shivering, though she wasn't sure if it was from the chill or the unease creeping into her mind. She kept walking, trying to ignore the growing tension in her chest. As she passed an old abandoned house at the end of the street, she heard it, a whisper. It was faint, almost like the wind, but distinct enough to send chills down her spine. Julia. She stopped dead in her tracks. The voice was barely audible, yet it carried a sinister weight. She turned around, scanning the dimly lit street. Nothing. Just the empty road, the lifeless houses, and the occasional flickering street lamp. Her breathing became shallow. Maybe I imagined it, she thought, just the wind playing tricks on me. She forced herself to keep walking, her pace quickening. But just as she reached the next street corner, Julia! This time the whisper was closer, right behind her. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She spun around, her breath caught in her throat. The street was just as empty as before, but something was wrong. The air felt heavier, thicker, as if something unseen was pressing against her. She fumbled for her phone, turning on the flashlight and sweeping the beam around her. The light cast long, eerie shadows, stretching across the pavement like grasping fingers. Then she saw it. A shadow, too tall, too thin, standing just beyond the reach of the street lamp's glow. It didn't move, it didn't breathe, but it whispered. A sharp wave of terror surged through Julia's body. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her legs felt frozen in place. The shadowy figure remained still, yet she could feel it watching her. Her phone trembled in her grasp as she took a step backward. The moment she moved, the whisper returned, soft and deliberate. Julia. She bolted. Her footsteps pounded against the pavement as she sprinted toward home. The cold air burned her lungs, but she didn't dare slow down. She could feel it behind her, moving without sound, keeping pace effortlessly. The whispering didn't stop. Julia. The way it said her name sent a jolt of ice through her veins. It wasn't just calling her, it was claiming her. Her house was just ahead. She reached her front door, her hands shaking too much to fit the key into the lock. The whisper was right behind her now, a breath against her neck. She forced the key in, twisted it, and stumbled inside, slamming the door shut. The house was silent except for her ragged breathing. Julia pressed her back against the door, squeezing her eyes shut. She had made it. She was safe. A nervous, breathless laugh escaped her lips. Maybe it was all in her head. Maybe the stress of the day had gotten to her. She turned to lock the door properly. A whisper directly in her ear. Julia.